the extraordinary political change in Burkina Faso, the extraordinary political change in Niger, the extraordinary political change in Mali, in Gabon, and the Malabo Protocol says that unconstitutional changes of government are not desirable. Whose constitution? Made under what tradition? People are tired. They are tired because we know that the ballot does not deliver. The ballot does not create democracy. It creates kakistocracies. Governments by our very worst. That is why out of 54 African countries, 40 of them, every election cycle, they print ballots outside of the continent of Africa. We don't trust each other. In the Democratic Republic of Congo now, there are 910 political parties. We have bastardized this thing that we inherited from Europe and America. We must rethink. Our countryman, the late Ali Mazrui, once said, in trying to answer this question of governance, he wrote a paper in the year 2001. If African politics is ethnic prone, can we have constitutions that are ethnic proof? And I dare say that we have failed. We have failed in many countries. The constitutions are not worth the paper that they are written on. We honor them in breach. The question is, what then must we do? And this is why I think that the young people present in this assembly are part of the solution. Part of the solution because the youth have a critical role to play, but you must never ignore the old. Because the old have some experience. They have some wisdom if they were wise in the beginning. Age on, and I want to be clear, age in and of itself does not make one intelligent. If you are a fool as a young person and you grow old, you are just an old fool. So I'm suggesting to us that we must respect age. The Oromo Gada system. Have you heard about the Oromo Gada system? When you acquire a certain age, you go to a certain level. In other words, the society takes advantage of the entire population. They take advantage of the youthful zest of the young ones. They take advantage of the measured experience of the old ones. And lo and behold, the society is complete. It can be done and it must be done. You know now, when I talk to professors at the universities across Africa, and they tell me that they are professors of political science, I ask them, what are you teaching in political science? Are you still teaching John Stuart Mill? Are you still teaching Sophocles and Aristophanes and Socrates and Plato? Are you still teaching Julius Caesar and Aurelius? Or you are teaching contemporary African politics? Are you teaching the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah? Are you teaching the philosophy, whether you like him or not, of Nnamdi Azikiwe? Are you teaching the ideas of Mashuda Abiola? Are you teaching Julius Kambarage Nyerere and Ujamaa? Are you teaching Kaunda and humanism? Are you teaching Andy Mbahaman Yatoivo in Namibia? Are you teaching Robert Subukwe? Are you teaching Winnie Madikizela Mandela? Are you teaching? Who are you teaching? Because we must begin to teach the ideas of our people and interrogate them, because nobody is perfect. All of us have sinned and fallen short of the expectation of the continent of Africa, but the time is now. And I hope and pray that what we see in the Sahel will be the beginning of something. You know, when the Americans became independent, there were only 13 original states. It can start with 4. And then the others will join. And then they will join. And in 100 years, we'll have a united Africa. The speaker before me talked about the many protocols that African Union makes. Oh, we met in Maputo and said how our women are going to be mainstreamed. Have we mainstreamed? We sat in Malabo and said that we are going to ensure good governance. Have we made it? We sat in Yamoussoukro in 1988 and said we were going to free the airspace. We sat in Kampala in the year 2012 and said we are going to eliminate internally displaced persons. We sat in Kigali in the year 2018 and said that we are going to have a single African passport. We sat in Addis Ababa in the year 2013 and said we have Agenda 2063. We sat and said that we are going to have Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We sat here in Abuja in the year 2001 and said that we are going to have 15% of our budget in the medical field. Have we done all those? Africa is a forest of protocols and a sea of conventions which nobody ever swims in, and the forests, the trees are never cut. I'm suggesting to us that the time is now. The time is now for us to ensure that we change. Because I must not belabor the issue. I must not belabor the issue because we need action. The beauty of the moment is that something is happening. Something is beginning to happen. People are moving. And people are saying that it must be done. I have people in this assembly with whom we have moved across the continent. Lina Sokorie is now establishing a university here in Abuja to talk about governance in Africa. The president of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, has just set up a school of governance in Abeokuta. Things are happening. My good friend Arikana Chihombori Kwao, in 2018, we were 200 of us in Ghana talking about African unity. In 218, we were with President Chakwera in Malawi. On the 29th day, we are in Somaliland in Hargeisa. In October, we are in Ouagadougou. And then we are in Liberia. We are moving. People are moving across the continent. And the reason why that is happening is because we now know what is Nigeria without Africa. Nigeria, Lord Lugard, in the year 1914, put North and South together. It can't be made without Lord Lugard's agenda. It can't be done. I want Nigeria to be the leader. 1 out of every 5 black people in the world are Nigerians. If you go to any place and you don't find a Nigeria, run away, because that place is not worth habiting. You find them in all fields. Nigeria, provide the leadership. Nigeria, give us a governance system. Whether it's a federation or a confederation, give us a governance system. Nigeria, don't define yourselves as Igbo or Yoruba or Kanuri or Hausa or Fulani. Don't. When you give us, when Nigeria does that, Benin will follow, Togo will follow, Chad will follow, Burkina Faso will follow, all countries will follow, and once we have captured the West, the Spirit will move to the center. The Spirit will move to the East, The Spirit will move to the south. The Spirit will move to the north, and those in the north who question the Africanness, the ghost of questioning will be exercised, and they will agree. Which reconvenes next year in Nairobi. No, it must be the beginning of something. I know the colonizer did something to us, took away our language. He colonized our minds. I agree with Ngugi wa Thiong'o. We must decolonize our minds. He drew boundaries. We must dissolve those boundaries. He created offices and election circles. In many African countries, our preoccupation is political office and elections. You don't hear the Arabs talk about that. The Chinese don't talk about that. We must stop thinking in 4-year election terms. Let us think 100 years from hence. That is the only way in which we'll create jobs for the continent of Africa. You know, the gods talk in very strange ways. When we were here, a little earlier, in the presence of the Deputy Speaker, the lights disappeared. It was a statement to authority here and in Africa that we have problems to solve. The energy problem that the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga talked about. We have disease to deal with. We have unemployment to deal with. We have technology to deal with. We are not going to deal with them in silos of little countries. We cannot have over 33 currencies in Africa. We cannot have 54 passports. It cannot be that it takes 24 hours to travel from Lagos in Nigeria to Windhoek in Namibia. It cannot be, and it must not be. So today, I am concluding by saying, African unity must be there. But it is not the unity of the graveyard where people agree in silence. It is the unity where ideas are cross-fertilized and cross-pollinated by ideas, and bad ideas give way to good ideas. It will be united when people begin not to have too much faith in the offices that they hold, but they have faith in serving the people. I do not know how many of you here have heard of this great African with whom I want to end my speech, James Eman Kwejiragre. James Eman Kwejiragre was a Ghanaian. He was the teacher of the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah. But before I come to him, permit me to mention yet another African who is important. This African is a South African called Pixley Kaisa Kaseme, often referred to as the founder of the African National Congress. In April the year 1906, in the University of Columbia in the United States of America, he delivered an iconic speech called The Regeneration of Africa. Africa must regenerate. He was only 27 years of age, the age of those who are here. You are the ones who are going to change Africa. Don't shy away. Seize the opportunity. In the dinner table of change, there are no invitation letters written, répondez s'il vous plaît. You break the door and find yourselves in the room and take charge. This is the time. James M. Kwejiragri said that when the white man came, he did this. And he said, comparing it to a poultry farmer, he said that in his village, there was a poultry farmer. That poultry farmer, as all poultry farmers do, kept chicken. One day, the young one of an eagle also strayed. And the eagle and the chicken were fed by the farmer for several years. But another day, a naturalist came and saw the eagle and said, but this is not chicken. And the chicken farmer said, yes, it used to be an eagle, but we have fed it on chicken feed for so long, it lost its chickenhood, it lost its eaglehood, is now chicken. But the naturalist said, no, once you are an eagle, no matter how long you've been fed on chicken feed, you'll always be an eagle. He came one day and held the eagle on the palm of his hand and urged it to leave. It refused to leave. And the chicken farmer said, I told you, it was once an eagle. We have fed it on chicken feed for too long, but it is now chicken. We have been fed on the chicken feed of IMF, chicken feed of the World Bank, chicken feed of USAID, chicken feed of GIZ, chicken feed of USAID, chicken feed of CEDA Sweden, chicken feed of CEDA Canada. But the following day he came when the sun was rising, and he placed on his palm, and the eagle flew away. And he said, I told you, no matter how long you feed an eagle on chicken feed, when the time comes, it will assume its eaglehood and it will fly. You are the eagles, and I'm urging you to fly. Governance is not uniquely African. And therefore, let us not judge ourselves too harshly. In Asia, who among you here will forget the war between India and Pakistan? Who among you here will forget the recent conflicts in Sri Lanka and in Bangladesh, in Thailand, the coup d'etats in Indonesia? Who among you here will forget the wars in Latin America, coup d'etats in Brazil, in Argentina, in Chile, in El Salvador, in Nicaragua, in Colombia? Misgovernance is not uniquely African. And when we talk about Africa, it's because she is the mother continent. Our continent has been humiliated through slavery. History teaches us that 12,000 ships left the shores of Africa to take our kith and kin to the Caribbean, and that 1.8 million of them died. We never talk about those who died upon landing there. We have been humiliated and dehumanized through slavery. We were enslaved by the Europeans. It was not enough. When the project of enslavement lost its luster, they introduced yet another diabolical scheme, colonization. And through that colonization, they sat down in Berlin in 1884 and 1885 and divided us into spheres of influence. The French had their own, the Germans had their own, the British had their own, the Portuguese had their own, the United Kingdom or the English had their own, the Italians had their own, the Belgians had their own, and they sowed the seed of discord and mistrust in us. They came here and told the Hausa and the Fulani, the Yoruba are no good, and vice versa. They told the Igbo the same thing. They told the Kanuri the same thing. They told the Kalabari the same thing. Divide and rule was the philosophy that governed them. And we fought back because the black man has always fought back. As I stand here, I can, courtesy of history, see the fight back from the Caribbean. Sylvester Williams in Trinidad and Tobago, holding the Pan-African meetings. We fought back. I can still see Marcus Garvey telling us to come back to the mother continent. We fought back. We fought back in the Caribbean. We fought back in the United States of America. Great names emerge. John Henry Clark, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Carter G. Woodson. We fought back. Then we met in 1945 in Manchester at the Pan-African Conference meeting, and on that occasion, the continent of Africa was represented. Kwame Nkrumah was there. Kamuzu Banda was there. Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta was there. Nigeria's Obafemi Awolowo was there. They were there. And we came back and fought the colonial project. And the colonial project was defeated. We can still hear the words of the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah in March of 1957, telling all who are listening that the independence of Ghana meant nothing unless the rest of Africa so that when in 1958 the French President Charles de Gaulle asked those who are colonized to vote yes or no, yes to remain independent but under French control, Ahmed Sékou Touré said, we prefer to live in dignity and poverty rather than to live in comfort and in slavery. And Guinea regained our independence in 1958. I can still remember the man for whom I am named, Patrice Lumumba, writing from Tisville prison to his wife Josephine Opango and saying, I know I will die, but Africa shall be governed by Africa and her story will be told by Africa. And I can still hear that. I can still hear Julius Kambarage Nyerere in 1962 telling Jomo Kenyatta, Apollo Milton Obote, and Edward Mutesa, I'm prepared to delay the independence of Tanganyika that we may regain independence as one country, but they listen not. I can still hear David Dako of Central African Republic, then known as Ubangishari, saying that unity is important because it is the only thing that is going to immunize us against the vagaries of the neo-colonial project. I can still hear Algeria's Ahmed Ben Bella and many others, Gamal Abdel Nasser. And I can see the 32 leaders assembled in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, between the 23rd to the 25th days of May 1963, each one of them inspired. Can still remember the speech of Haile Selassie, that of Nyerere, that of David Dako, but the most iconic of them, that of the Osagyefo, Kwame Nkrumah, delivered on Saturday, the 25th day of May 1963, telling his audience, we must unite now. Let us live here with one government, with one army, with one currency, with one capital. And I propose, he said on that day, that the capital of Africa should be Leopoldville, now Kinshasa. But others can choose another. I can hear him. But we listened to him not. And we ended up with the Organization of African Unity, a week jamboree where African leaders attend and deliver speeches which are only mouth deep and heart absent. So that today, as we are gathered here, look at our continent. As we talk about new governance, what is it that we must do? Because we are here not to lament, we are here to prescribe solutions. John Henry Clark said that when African countries regained their independence, each one of them adopted a system of governance that was inherited from the colonizer. And I tell you, none of them will succeed on the basis of those systems. And if you doubted John Henry Clark, look at our mother continent. Look at her. Since we gained the thing that we call independence, look at what they did to Sylvanus Olympia in 1963. Togo has never been the same again. Look at what they did to Lumumba in 1961. The Democratic Republic of Congo has never been the same again. Look at what they did to Ahmed Ben Bella in Algeria. It has never been the same again. Look at what they did to Ahmed Sékou Touré in Guinea. Guinea has never been the same again. Look at what they did to Amilcar Cabral in Guinea-Bissau and Cabo Verde. It has never been the same again. Look at what they did in Sudan. It is at war. Look at what they did to John Garang Di Mabior in South Sudan. Never the same again. Look at Somalia. Never the same again. Look at northern Mozambique. Not the same again. Look at the Sahel. What they did to Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara. Not the same again. That is the continent. That is why we are gathered here to ask ourselves the fundamental question. What systems of governance can we adopt in order to realize our potential? In 1965, the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah wrote a book in which it is actually claimed, and for which he was removed from power. The book was Neo-Colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And he says in the book, it is the most dangerous Because the colonialist is at his most desperate. He's desperate now. He's desperate and wants to destroy us. But what are we doing, we in the mother continent? You know, the white man was diabolically clever. Chinua Achebe writes in his book, Things Fall Apart, in 1958, he came, told us that our gods were bad. He told us that our governance systems were bad. He told us that our names were bad. He told us that our customs are bad, that our languages were bad, and our governance systems were bad. And we believed him. And because we believed him, we find ourselves in the space where we are. We inherited things that we cannot understand. So constantly on a daily basis, we are in a space where we climb trees to look for fish. We will never find fish in the trees. We must rethink how we are doing things. I never use the word democracy unless when I want to explain it away. Because what is democracy? Who defined it? The Greeks. It was good for them. The Americans redefined it. Abraham Lincoln saying it is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. He defined it for themselves. When the Americans in Declaration of Independence are saying, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are born equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Slavery is alive and well. The civil rights movement is in 1960 when I'm alive. Which men were they talking about? Which democracy were they talking about? I talk about good governance. Because something must have been good amongst the Yoruba. That is why the Oni of Ife still makes sense. Something must have been good about the Emir of Kano. That is why it still makes sense. Something must have been good about the leader of Ijebu land. That is why it still makes sense. Isn't there something that we can get from there and create our own? This Coca-Cola-ized democracy from Europe and America, why must we continue to have it? This is the question. Your own kinsman, Adekeye Adebajo, writes a book which I commend to you, in which he says, The Curse of Berlin, Africa after the Cold War. We are still wedded to boundaries. My kinsman and friend and the former Prime Minister of Kenya said he needs a visa, a single entry visa, to come to Nigeria. Why? 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 Because of Berlin? I come here, my miserable Kenya shilling must compete against the naira, and you don't even accept it. You want the almighty dollar. Why? Why? It is governance, and we can do something about it. A lot has been written about it. My good friend, who is a professor of political science and himself a traditional ruler in Ghana, Nana Kobinanketia V, has written a book about culture and governance in Africa. These are the questions that we ought to be asking ourselves. What is it that the Baganda do? What is it that the Zulu do? What is it that the Bunyoro Kitara do? What is it that the Akan do? What is it that the Mosi do? What is it that the Malinke do? What is it that the Zulu do? What is it that the Swati do? What is it that the Herero do? What is it that the Ovambo do? What is it that the Ovimbunu do? What is it that the Shona do? What is it that the Ndebele do? What is it that the Luo do? What is it that the Koyo do that cannot be fused into something, and we distill something that is uniquely African, rich in diversity? What is it that the Japanese are doing? What is it that the Koreans are doing? What is it that the Thais are doing? What is it that the Vietnamese are doing? What is it that the Arabs are doing that we cannot do? Are we children of a lesser God? Us. Through education. Samora Moises Machel at one time said that one day he listened to some Africans arguing, and they were saying, we are better off because we were colonized by the British. And another said we were better off because we were colonized by the French or in Europe. And Samora said it is like slaves sitting down and saying that one slave master is better than the other. And he said, what does it matter when the slave? And I'm suggesting to us that the time is now for us to rethink how we govern ourselves. And it can be done, and it must be done, because if it is not done, we are done. You know, many ideas have been floated in Africa, and I am of the view that something is happening. You know, when I see young men across the conference and across the continent of Africa saluting the extraordinary political change, you can see I was not using the word coup d'etat.